I graduated with a 4.0 GPA and I was in the top 7% of my class by class rank. If you grew up and went to school in the Netherlands, that meant absolutely nothing to you because the Dutch schooling system is completely different from the American schooling system. And in this video, I'm going to explain how that is. Now, the first difference between the Dutch schooling system and the American schooling system is the grading system. The grading system. So like I said, I had a 4.0 GPA and I was top 7% in my class when I graduated. What does that even mean? So basically, in the US, you're graded on a scale from 0 to 100, which also corresponds with a letter grade. Basically, to make a long story short, if you get a 90 or above, from 90 to 100, you have an A in that class. Throughout high school, throughout all 4 years of high school, I got an A or better, an A or A plus in every single class that I ever took. Every single class. Thus, I finished with a 4.0 and I was top 7% in my class rank. I think I was somewhere between 60 and 80 out of 1,100 people, which is pretty good. That's pretty impressive. Well, here in the Netherlands, they don't track class rank in that same way, at least from what I understand. Based on the conversations that I've had with my girlfriend, that's not something that they really track. And if I'm gonna be completely honest, I think that's actually a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they don't track class rank because class rank insinuates that some students are better than others, when in reality, more often than not, some students simply thrive in the schooling environment, whereas others don't. And I think that entrepreneurship is a great example of how some students who didn't do well in school do very well when it comes to actually applying information. School is not the best metric for intelligence that there is. And I think that by eliminating the class ranking system, you make that abundantly clear. Now, aside from that, another way that the Netherlands has sort of removed this hierarchy from the schooling system is by creating a classification system. Now, this right here is completely different from anything that I've ever encountered in the US. It's simply something that we don't have. Back home in the US, whenever you go to school with all different types of people. So you're going to share the classroom with people who are going to end up in prison. You're going to share the classroom with people who are going to become doctors. You might even share a classroom with the future president of the United States. And also, you're going to share that same classroom with future electricians, plumbers, carpenters. You're going to share that classroom with entrepreneurs. Everybody is in that same classroom, and it's not really tailored to any specific type of person on any specific track in life. Here in the Netherlands, that is not the case. Now, feel free to provide more details in the comments if you know more about how this works, because obviously I didn't grow up or go to school here. I'm just going based on what my girlfriend and other people on the internet have told me. But basically, the way it works in the Netherlands is that when you're around 11 or 12 years old, which I think is a bit young, but again, different discussion for a different day, you take a test, and this test determines your track. Now, to my knowledge, there are, I think, 3 or 4 tracks, something like that. HAVO, MAVO, VMBO, and then something else. Again, correct me if I'm wrong and provide as many details as you can in the comments and I'll pin your comment. But in the Netherlands, you take this test, and I don't know if it's based on the grade you get or just, I don't know the details, okay? I don't know the details of how this works. But basically, you take this test, and based on how you do on the test, your teacher gives you advice on which path to pick. And based on that advice, you enroll in a different kind of school. So there are schools for multiple different tracks, like I said. One school will take you directly into the workforce after high school. And also, just another little side note, here in the Netherlands, you go straight from elementary to high school. There is no middle school. At 11 or 12 years old, you go straight to high school, which I still think is one of the absolutely most mind-blowing things about the Netherlands and the Dutch schooling system, is that you have 11-year-olds in the same school as 18-year-olds. That blows my mind. But anyways, at 11 or 12, you go to high school, and some high schools lead you directly into the workforce right after high school, and I think you even graduate a little bit earlier. So at around 16 or 17, you graduate high school and you go into the workforce. These are your traditional tradesmen, your plumbers, your electricians, your carpenters, manual laborers in general. Then you have another track that takes you to college. College, I think, is for sort of mid-level professional jobs. So maybe you're accountants or things of that nature, but not necessarily very high-level jobs. You're not going to become an engineer by going to college, because college is a 2-year degree here. If you want to be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, or anything like that, you have to go on the track that takes you through university. So you have to go to university, and university is a 4-year degree. And once you finish that, you can then become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever you want to become. Because, and we'll talk more about college later on in this video, but one aspect of college here in the Netherlands is that it doesn't really matter what degree you get. It doesn't really matter what degree you get. It matters what kind of degree you get. So it doesn't matter if you majored in accounting. It matters that you went to college or you went to university. That is the biggest predictor of your professional success here, which is obviously very different from the US, because in the US, if you get the wrong degree, you're basically cooked. You're basically cooked because you owe all of this money. And like I said, that's something that we'll talk about later in this video, is college tuition. But let's go back to elementary school, because something that I've noticed about elementary school, and I guess high school as well, is the level of freedom that children and adolescents have here in regards to school. So I don't know if you've seen in the background, but there have been multiple students that have passed me on this bike lane since I started filming this video. It is 12:47 p.m. 12:47 p.m. and there are students simply riding on the bike lane, clearly not in school. Now, on the way here to this filming location, I saw students biking and I thought, oh, maybe they're skipping school. But then I started to see more and more of them, and I realized they're not all skipping school. There's no way that all of them are skipping school. And I know it's not a holiday because I saw kids playing on the playground, which I'll get to in a second. I saw kids playing on the playground on the way here with the teachers out there watching them. So I know for a fact that it's not a school holiday. Somehow students here are just able to leave school, I guess for lunch or maybe between classes. I don't know how that works. Back home, that was not the case, okay? That was not the case. In high school, for lunch, you had to stay on campus. I think when my sister went to my high school, they were allowed to go to restaurants, they were allowed to leave campus as long as they were back in time, but they ruined it for us because they were basically leaving for lunch and just not coming back. I don't know if a lot of students do that here, but back home, where I went to school at least, at Louisville High School in Louisville, Texas, that simply didn't work out very well because students were leaving. Now, on that topic, you heard me mention that there were students playing on the playground on the way here. Something else that I've noticed about Dutch schools is the general lack of security around the schools. Now, this is actually a very good thing because it's an indication that we are in a very, very, very safe area where the playgrounds don't even have gates around them. The playgrounds don't have gates around them. Again, this is mind-blowing to me because I don't think something like that would have worked at my school. The kids were too bad. They would have left, never come back, and there would have been lawsuits. It would have been absolute chaos. I think a few kids did escape, and that's with us having had gates around the playground. But here at the elementary schools, they rarely have fences around the playgrounds, and it seems to me like if you wanted to, you could simply walk into any school you wanted to with no real need for identification. Back home, if you wanted to go into a school, you have to register with the office and basically you put your name in the guest list, etc., and then wear this little sticker that says your name and says that you're a guest. Otherwise, the police will escort you out of there. And yes, we did have police, we did have school officers at our schools, especially in high school. And another thing is that back home, we had to wear IDs. We had to wear student ID cards every single day at school. I'm talking about you'll have the cleanest outfit on, but then you have to wear that lanyard around your neck with the ID, and it would completely ruin it. One of the dumbest things that we had to do, in my opinion, but I guess it was a safety measure with all of the school shooters and all of that. But even then, it didn't really make sense because a lot of times school shooters go to the school that they're shooting up. But again, different discussion for a different day. We had to wear ID cards, and from what I've seen, that is not the case here in the Netherlands. As a matter of fact, whenever I told my girlfriend about that, she was very shocked. She was surprised to hear that that was the case back home. And I'd imagine that a lot of Dutch people would be surprised as well, but they were serious about those ID cards. They were so serious about them. If you came to school without that ID card, you had to pay them $1 to get a temporary ID card. Otherwise, I think they would either send you home or you had to go to in-school suspension, something like that. Here, they don't even have fences around the elementary school playgrounds, which again is a very, very good sign. But I don't think it's something that would work in the US because kids would be escaping, kids would be getting snatched up, and again, that would just lead to lawsuits and general chaos and turmoil. Now, another thing that separates the US schooling system from the Dutch schooling system, especially throughout primary school, meaning elementary, middle, and high school, is that we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. I grew up not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I never really said it. I would just kind of stand there and let other people say it. But I grew up hearing the Pledge of Allegiance 5 times a week for 9 months out of the year, 13 years straight, from age 5 to age 17, so 12 years straight, from age 5 to age 17, because I graduated early. I grew up hearing the Pledge of Allegiance 5 times a week. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I still have it ingrained within my memory, even though I never really said it myself. And on top of that, I lived in Texas, where we had a state pledge. We had a state pledge. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. I think I got the Texas pledge right, but I know I got the US pledge right. Honestly, I agree with European people that that's kind of creepy. Looking back on it, I think it's sort of amoral to make 5, 6, and 7-year-olds pledge allegiance when they don't even know what that really means yet. I mean, most 17 or 18-year-olds don't even really know what that means yet. And furthermore, most 17 and 18-year-olds don't really know what it means to take on tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, which is the next thing that I want to talk about in regards to the Dutch schooling system versus the American schooling system, is college tuition. Listen, this is not okay, okay? It is not okay that Americans are going into $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of debt before the age of 25. That's not okay. Because here in the Netherlands, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong again in the comments, there is no student out here that is $100,000 in debt from student loans. There is no student out here that is $100,000 in student loan debt like I would have been had I gone to the school that I got into because of my high class rank. Okay, my class rank got me into my dream school, the University of Texas at Austin, and with the scholarship that I would have gotten, I would have graduated at the age of 22 with around $90,000 in student loan debt. Imagine being 22 years old with $90,000 in student loan debt. Okay, your life is basically over at that point. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I just don't see how people can stomach that. I think the only reason why people accept it is because it's just the norm. They don't know any better. They don't realize that here in the Netherlands, having $10,000 in student loans is a lot. That's considered a lot here in the Netherlands, much less 90,000 or 100,000. Or my sister, she just graduated from medical school. I mean, she's probably going to be in the six figures with the student loan debt. Granted, she's going to make it back and then some. And I would say that medical school is probably one of the only degrees that you can get that actually justifies the price that you're paying. But for most people who go to college in the US, I mean, they're basically agreeing to servitude. They're agreeing to servitude because once you come out of college with that student loan debt, you have no choice but to work at a traditional job until you pay that debt off. And for a lot of people, especially with inflation, with the rising cost of rent, gas, groceries, all of that, a lot of people aren't going to pay their student loan debt off for a few decades. So I mean, they're basically stuck. And fun fact, you can't get rid of student loan debt via bankruptcy. If you have student loan debt, you have student loan debt, and there's nothing you could do about it other than pay it with interest. So, like I said, I think it's immoral, I think it's criminal to charge 17 and 18-year-olds that much money to go to college to get an education, because ultimately, education is the key to a successful society. Granted, education doesn't have to come from college. I'm living proof of that. I'm a college dropout, and I've made a way for myself. But for a lot of people, traditional education is going to be a solid path to achieving a good life. And that $90,000 in student loan debt, in my personal opinion, negates that. It negates that. And look, I'm going to keep it real. Personally, I would rather raise my children in the Netherlands than in the US, but if we did decide to raise children in the US rather than the Netherlands, I would actively encourage them to not go to college. I would actively encourage them to not go to college unless they had a full ride scholarship.